Okay. And let's see, did I miss anything that people were saying or asking? Oh, hello,
I don't
Maria
think.
me again. Okay, there's too many messages. I'll just scroll to the bottom. Okay, so quick overview. Animation, you only need Blender, nothing else. And okay, so you need Blender, and then you need the Unreal Engine 4 plugin. The link to that should be in the.
I'll link it now then, if you want.
Let me see if it's in here. In the animation instructions channel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you're doing animation, you'll initially come up with not this, but something else. And let's go with that first. And you'll probably start off with this because that comes in the zip file for the animation. But we won't be working strictly from here, but we're going to be working from somewhere else instead, and that is the uh, initial stance. I think this initial stance has also been linked in that animation folder. And if it's not, I will link it again. Just tell me if that's not linked in there, and then I'll link it again in the instructions. Okay, so this is what the initial stance looked like. If you look at the hands themselves, there's actually something special here that's happening. And that is, if you look from the front view, I should actually turn on something so that you guys know what I'm pressing here. If you look at the side view and the front view, you'll see that both hands are kind of mirrored in their angles, and this is their local space. Now look at the local space of the hands. They're not completely centered. Well, this one is, and this one is over here. The fingers are not centered, but the hands, they are, the local space is pointing directly horizontal. You can select things with the right click, but I'm currently using the left click because I went to File, User Preferences, into Input, and selected select with left instead of the default, which is right. So the reason for this is that if we look at the spear as well, if I can see the spear for a moment here, you can see that local space is also completely horizontal. This way, whenever you rotate this direction with the spear, whoops, not this direction with the spear, but this direction with the hand, then everything will move in that axis. As you can see, once the hand goes too far away from its supposed location in the spear, it will delocate itself. Okay, so this is what you start off with. And one thing to keep of note is how did we make it so that all the hands move with the spear? Because by default, the spear and the model are different objects, and the hands, they move independently. So normally they would not move together. What we did is what you can do for all two-handed weapons. This is what we are going to be doing for later all the other two-handed weapons, like two-handed swords, as well as two-handed guns, and the cannons. Um, you're going to need to parent the weapon to the movement of the body. And there's two ways of doing it. Well, let's talk about the most intuitive way. You think of the most intuitive way is to have the spear be a child of both the hands but you can't do that. An object can always only be child of another object, of a single other object. So what you can do is you can have both of these hands be a child of the spear. So they're only one child of something. Still, so that follows the rule. Or you can have one hand be the child of another hand and also have the spear be a child of that hand. By the way, this is pretty much portrayed over here in the bone constraints. So as you can see, this has no bones constraints. This one does. And the spear also does. But the spear is an object and it doesn't have any bones in it. So that it uses a hand constraint, or not an object constraint instead. Don't worry about the differences between object constraint and bone constraint at the moment, because this is a tutorial about animation and not necessarily bones. Okay, so let's see. Let's start with the initial pose at 0, 0. Okay, there we go. So initially we start out at this pose, and in order to save this pose, we click on one of the black lines or one of these floating objects. By the way, the floating objects that are in red, those are IKs. As you also notice, the hand rectangle over here is also an IK. What an IK is basically, it stands for inverse kinematics, and it's a really fancy term for saying how do all of these bones in the hands interact with each other when one of them is moved, or when the whole thing is moved. These spherical IKs, they're for controlling the location at which the knees are pointing at and the elbows are pointing at. That's why you have one over here for this right elbow and one over here for the left elbow. And these two are really close to the knees because that's what they control. Now, to save everything, you either select on one of the IKs or one of the black lines that symbolize the controls for the bones, and you press A twice. It says 4 times, but it's only twice. Yeah, it's only twice, and then you press I, and then lock rotation scale. Okay? And after that, you want to go to frame number 4. Well, first of all, let's delete the frames here. So this is, what you can do here is Alt-I and delete the keyframes. Let's say we want this pose so that it's swinging from, let's say, the bottom right side over here and then diagonally upwards. So let's use the pivot point, which is this hand over here, and let's start moving it. Of course, we have to make sure it's on frame number 4. And this is just the standard that we're using for moving everything. Okay, it's a bit off now. Good. Let's go to the top view, numpad 7. Also, you can only go orthographic view using the numpad key. So if you don't have a numpad of a keyboard, you can use these options over here, which does the same thing. Okay, let's go to the upper view and rotate this hand over to the side a bit. And let's go over here and rotate it down a bit. Okay, it looks a bit weird now, but that's because the body is not rotated correctly. So let's take care of this. And the head is now also rotated incorrectly, so let's fix that. Yep, that looks pretty good. So we could probably rotate the spear a bit more. So let's click on this hand again and find where the rotation axis is. It's around here. Yeah, this actually should be pretty good. Now let's go and change the IKs for the elbows. The reason why the elbows are clipping into the body is because the IKs are making them forced to be pointed that direction. So you can think of it as you're moving kind of like a doll, but the controls on the dolls are a little bit awkward. Okay, now let's move the space of them. Let's use global controls this time. Okay, I do not like the axis of rotation here, so let's change that a little bit. And let's rotate that down back here. Okay, this looks fairly decent.
Mm-hmm.
And then once again, let's save the pose. Press A twice. I, lock rotation scale. Now, the reason why this initial pose has all those red axes aligned will now become apparent. Once again, we can take a quick look at those. The red axis is pointed here, here, and here. They're all aligned. So now what we can do is we will rotate this hand. First of all, let's copy all the poses and move them to frame 22. By the way, the poses will automatically interpolate between each other. So that's why it moved in the process of dragging that. Sometimes it doesn't work, so try it again. There we go. Now we go choose this hand right here and spin it upwards. Notice how that went a little bit too far. So let's bring this a little bit back and let's start moving the hand inwards, and let's see. Okay, it's a little bit off because once again the waist is no longer rotated in that direction. So now let's rotate this waist back. And once again the elbows are kind of messed up. So now let's change those elbows again. And let's get the head rotated back forward. It's a little bit extreme, but this is just an example, so we won't worry about that right now. Yeah, you can kind of tilt your head that far. It's still kind of okay. And now let's take a look at what the entire thing looks like. Not bad. We can do Control Alt Q and then look at it from all for perspectives, we can press this button right down here to only view the mesh itself. Okay, we can see that the hand is letting loose a little bit there. So we need to fix this. Once again, shift click this so that everything is selected. Alt shift Q again to return. So let's look at that a little bit more in close slow motion. Okay, so the hand is going a little bit too far. We can try to adjust this through the final pose of the hand. Okay, now it's kind of clipping into the body, so we don't want that. How about this? Okay, that looks slightly better. If we want to look at this frame by frame, we can go here and watch. Head back to 0 again. Go frame by frame. We can see no clipping and the hand is firmly in grasp of the sphere. So there we go. That is one diagonal swing completed. But this is kind of monotonic. It looks like there's not that much strength in the swing. So let's do something called the curve editor. It's a pretty nice, neat little trick thing. And you access that by using the graph editor over here. Oh, it's called the graph editor, my bad. And let's control the hand and go over here and just look at all these rotations. Press home and then everything normalizes itself. We know that the start of the swing is in the 4th frame, so click that dot there. You know that you clicked it with the rungs at the edges of this. Then you can open up this thing over here and send it to Quintic. Do the same thing with everything else. And let's immediately look at the effect. Okay, now it's slower, but everything else does not catch up, so we need to do it to everything. Okay, let's also do this to the movement of the X, Y, and Z. Press home again to recenter everything. Let's do the same thing to the hand. Press home, everything zoomed in. Okay, these are not moving because they're locked in position. What about here? Once again, they're locked in, so we don't have to worry about those. Let's see. Let's lock in, or not lock in the position of the pelvis, but adjust the location of the pelvis, or the rotation of the pelvis. Because that also rotates, so once again, everything to Quintic. Cannot see it. Okay, there we go. Although it's flat, we'll just do that to make sure. and also the head, because you can't forget the head was also rotating in that process. Home, this, quintic, 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 and what did I miss? Ah, there we go. Quintic, blue, and yellow. Okay, they're all done. Now let's see what it looks like. Okay, now you can see that it's like gathering strength for the swing. The elbows look a little bit off, so that means we also have to do this for the elbow controls. Note that we did not rotate these, so we only need to move the X, Y, and Z locations for them. And in our case, we only controlled the quintic, or not, we only controlled the movement in one axis, so we just need to change this for this one. And this one, let's do the same. Whoops. Home and quintic. Now let's watch this full animation. Yep. And now it looks like it's gathering strength for the swing and then going through full swing. It's a little bit choppy when returning to the starting animation, but that's something we can change by simply removing the starting animation, or not removing the starting animation, but removing the starting stance. Then the entire swing will just be really smooth. Let's go Control Alt Q and look at it in all 4 angles. And we have a bottom right to top left animation. And as you can see, this is very quick, very easy, and that's why I was able to complete the entire set of animations within like 2 hours. Oh, one more thing is, once you have something like this, you can easily go here, Control All, Control Copy, move it here, paste that, copy this one, overwrite that, select this one again here, overwrite this one. Ah, it didn't work. You have to be really careful with this that you don't overwrite everything. Okay. We still have this animation now in reverse. So copy this animation, now overwrite this one. Alt I, delete keyframe. And now we have the reverse. And that's why doing one animation in one swing direction and then reversing that is extremely quick. You just literally copy pasted and reverse the movement. And that's basically it. Any questions?
Question time. Yeah. Can I just basically summarize 2 weeks worth of headache into a 10 minutes video?
Figuring out Blender. The great journey.
Was it a great journey though?
It was a really great journey. Basically, everything depended on figuring out the right starting stance. Because as you saw, like when we first did the 2 positions, the hand was clipping through the body, and the left hand was clipping through the body. The right hand was letting go of the spear. So that all depends on how close the 2 hands are positioned together, and whether or not the axis of rotation of the hands is completely lined up with the spear or not. So getting all of that done was a massive issue. and finding the correct parenting structure
Mm-hmm.
was the other problem. So it was like ironically 1.5 weeks of figuring that out, and then like 2 hours of finishing all the animations. So as you can see, creating the animations is really simple in Blender. So if you want to create a skill animation, this is very, very easy. The yellow lines in the bottom time lapse. Okay, those are where frames are. That's why I was selecting them and then copying, pasting them, because I was copying those stances and moving them around. And that's what's so powerful about this technique, is that you can literally copy stances and move them around in the timeline and it'll be played.
Yeah, so the yellow lines are the poses that we save. Everything else in between is interpolated automatically by the system.
Yeah, the system automatically does the interpolation, so that's why animation is pretty cool and fun. Because
Okay.
as long as you figure out how to get the stances correct, then everything is done for you.
Yep, sure. Technically, we only have 4 frames, but the system will handle what happens in between by itself. So,
Yeah, it will create
I mean, if
the
the
intermediate ones for you.
Ah, okay. Now I got it. Now I got it.
if the intermediate one is not something that you're looking for, you can always put another frame in between so that the system can interpolate more accurately per se.
But as you
So
see,
it's a series of
but as you've seen, the fact that we have 3 different kinds of stances, the starting stance, the ending stance are both the same one, so we only have 3 different stances, essentially. Right. But it looks kind of choppy because there's that middle stance right there. It doesn't look completely smooth, just by going back and forth between the 2 slashes, because of this. So that's why maybe in the future we only have 2 frames, pretty much. Any other questions?
S4. Kadia, any question? I guess no.
Looks AFK.
Yeah. Quite a few people
Okay.
aren't here.
If you got any other questions, obviously you can ping me, or direct message me, whichever is your preference. And
Okay.
I guess that will conclude this stream of animation tutorial in Blender.